have a seat. Kick things off. Yes.
Oh, wow.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to be using the microphone because even though there's a small, excited crowd here, there are hundreds of people in the web world, including at our partner school, Western Ontario. And all their students are watching this. So, all right, well, good afternoon. I'm Michael Scharf. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the co-dean of Case Western Reserve University School of Law. And we are very proud of our international law program, which is ranked 10th this year by U.S. News and World Report. That's the highest we've ever been ranked. And we've been climbing up over the years. We're also proud of our international law alums who have attained distinguished positions throughout the world. And I will say foremost among those is today's guest, Francois-Philippe Champagne, class of 1994.
Yep. Yeah, well,
So Minister Champagne is a businessman, lawyer, and international trade specialist with over 20 years of experience at large international companies in Europe, particularly in the fields of energy, engineering, and innovation. Since entering public service just 9 years ago in 2015, he has served as Member of Parliament, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, Minister of International Trade of Canada, and he is currently the Minister of the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. In 2018, he received the honorary doctorate from our university, and he gave our graduation speech. And just earlier today, he was meeting with the mayor of Cleveland, Justin Bibb, who said, "I met you before because you were my graduation speaker." So that's fantastic. So he was in town to meet with Mayor Bibb and others, and he volunteered to spend an hour with us for a fireside chat. And it's really a fireside chat. I can almost smell the embers. So we're going to begin with a few questions from me, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A from the audience. We're webcasting the event, so we're going to be using these microphones. And Eric, do you have other microphones for the...
repeat the questions.
Okay, you just ask the question and we'll repeat it and then answer it. So let's go to the first question. All right. Minister, you've had an extraordinary career, and it all started here at this law school, maybe even in this room. Can you tell us about, right there,
Somewhere here, I guess. I was not very tall at the time. I'm not much taller today, so I used to be in the front row.
Can you tell us about your professional journey for the students here today who are curious to learn about one pathway to a career in international affairs and commerce? And in particular, what drew you to this line of work, and how did your legal studies here prepare you for the positions that you've held?
It sounds like a question like in an exam, you know. You're much nicer than what I have to endure in Parliament, you know. I always say, like Churchill, hope you have good questions for my answers when I sit in Parliament. But listen, it's a real privilege to be here, by the way. Let me just say first, let me acknowledge someone without whom I would not be here. You know, some of you may know Lou Katz. When I started, a big round of applause, because he was really the instigator of that program that admitted foreign students into the LLM program and to Case Western Reserve Law School. And I also want to acknowledge you, because you are an amazing friend, and you had such a distinguished career on the international field and also at the International Criminal Court. So I just want to say, for all the students, everything is possible. Just look at me. Imagine me without white hair. I sit just next to you, most of you. You know, this is my journey. And unbeknown to me that one day I would be doing what I'm doing today, but it all started with a dream. And I must tell you, you know, I was doing more politics than probably studies when I applied to the law school. And I'll tell you two stories that will tell you a bit who I am. But first, when I applied, my grades were average. So I sent this before. By the way, when I applied, it was before the internet. So you had to take something on the billboard, send a letter. You needed a postal mandate to send that. And the law school answered like three months after. And I was so incredulous, I called back the registrar. I said, "Are you sure that I'm admitted?" They said, "Sir, we don't joke. We're Case Western Reserve University. Better show up on the date." So that was my first introduction to Case Western, driving my Volkswagen from Quebec in Canada to Cleveland. And once I got my diploma, I said that to the dean, or the dean at the time. I said, now that I have my diploma, locked somewhere, my mom is proud, my family, they think I made it. I said, let's be honest. Why would you ever accept a guy like me in your program? And he said, do you want the truth? I said, yes. He said, it may hurt, but I'll tell you the truth. He said, that was the first year we opened to international students, and you happen to be the only Canadian who applied. So, you know, in life, better be lucky sometimes than smart, but that's how I made it into the LLM program. And since then, it's been an amazing journey. If I had one advice, if I may, I'm still fairly young to give advice to others, but I would say, take the road less traveled. What brought me to Case Western was really a feeling at the time that, particularly in my role today, now leading the Canada-U.S. team and engaging with leaders on this side of the border, was really the fact that I saw that our two countries were integrated. We're friends, we're partners, we're allies, and I was feeling at the time that very few people knew the reality on both sides. I was a young lawyer. I was 22 at the time, I think, 23. And this program was open to foreign lawyers. And I said, I think it's worthwhile to gain like education or knowing U.S. law so that I can help people to do that. But unbeknown to me, believe it or not, the person next to me was an Italian guy and a former alumni, also Mauro Gigante. And when we finished, he said, what are you going to do? I lived, I think, in Wycliffe in an efficiency. It's not like I had a lot of assets to consider. And he said, would you come with us work at Bailey's in Wycliffe, which I did. And then that journey brought me, he became my boss. So always be nice to the person sitting next to you, because he ended up being my boss. And then our journey brought us to Italy for 5 years. So imagine, I was 24. My name is Champagne, so we don't have a lot of Italian blood in the family. And I ended up 5 years in Italy, then 10 years in Switzerland, and 5 years in London. And one dream I had was to do international law, a bit like you, Dean. But one thing I would say to you, take the road less traveled. I was the only one, I think, in my graduation back at the University of Montreal who decided to come to the United States to study. And I thought that at the time, you know, it's coming. I left to come back. I always wanted to do public service. But one thing I knew is that if I want to be a good leader one day, I needed international experience. I needed to understand other culture. I needed to see other systems. And honestly, I thought that Case Western would bring me even that understanding between Canada and the United States. But even then, I could not even foresee that 20 years of my life after that would be on the international road. And then to run for office and eventually be elected, and having the pleasure to serve and being, you know, on the world stage with a number of people. But I think sometimes I think and I had there's one book, not written by Case Western, but one which was written by a professor at Harvard, which is called True North. And I always remember the syndrome of the imposter. You know, you feel, am I the right person at the right place at the right time? And I would say, especially to the young women in the room, believe in yourself. I have been in rooms, you know, I don't look too old, but trust me, when I was 29, I didn't look very old either. And I ended up in Europe having to do things that honestly today I could never believe that I would have been entrusted. And I remember once I was leading a negotiation in Germany with the CEO of Mercedes-Benz, not exactly a small company. When you're like 29, it's like, you know, I go to Stuttgart, don't speak German. I remember walking and I was leading our delegation. We had to do a negotiation. And people look at me and say, I said, well, we should start the meeting. They said, well, we'll wait until the delegation has arrived. I said, I am the head of the delegation. And people thought, they said, oh, we thought you were the son of someone or something, just invited. And it has always been, you know, when you're the underdog in some of that, you realize that I would say believe in yourself. Believe in what you can do, dream big, and make sure that I would say the education I got here at Case Western was priceless. It gave me the confidence, it gave me the knowledge, and it gave me also the strength to do things that I would have thought, you know, going back to where I came from, quite impossible. And that's why I feel a lot of gratitude to people like Lou Katz, who was willing to deal with a young French Canadian in his cohort. And some of the people that I've met, I still be in touch today that were in my cohort. So the power of believing in yourself, the power of the connection you're making and opening yourself to the world, I think is probably the best thing you can do for yourself and the rest of your life. And just have a dream. I always believe in this triangle of success, which you need basic skills, which Case Western gave me. You need ambition, which a good sense of ambition is the right thing, and a lot of luck. That goes back to my admission at Case Western, luck.
Well, Minister, you've held several high-level posts in the Canadian federal government, including when you managed Canada's international relations through a worldwide pandemic. And I know being dean here during the pandemic years was no picnic, so I can only imagine what you had to go through. What experiences and observations stand out from your career in public service?
Well, I would say the one when I was foreign minister at the time of COVID is probably the weight of having the life of people on your shoulder. This was a role where the life of people depending on my action or mission. And I can tell you that repatriating 300,000 people, I used to talk to Mike Pompeo at the time. The U.S. was doing that, Europe. I mean, this was the time. I served as the equivalent of Secretary of State, Foreign Minister during the time of that administration, part of it. And I can tell you that I remember one night, because as I did to Lou Katz, which I admire to this day, give him my personal phone number. A lot of Canadians have my phone number. And people were texting me and saying, you know, my daughter is in India, in Jaipur. My son is in the mountain in Peru. My mom is on a cruise ship in the Panama Canal. And these people were expecting me at the time to really do miracles. And you know, the sense of having the life of people, that what you do or you don't do could really alter the course of the life of these people with really little means. I mean, I was like you know, I was one of the first one when what was called in Wuhan, when the virus started, and unbeknown to me, that this would become a worldwide issue. You know, it started, the intelligence we got, we had few people who had, there was a small issue, and obviously then the cruise ships and all that, the magnitude of that, it was unbelievable. I mean, something that, but I think that the biggest thing when you have responsibilities is when the life of people are at stake. And I can tell you one night I was looking at the window and wondering if I could save all these people. And you know, looking at my wife and say, I just don't know. A lot of people are putting faith in me. I can work 24 hours a day, but you know what? Some of these things are bigger than what I can muster. But you know, you need to find this inner strength. And I knew one thing, that despite the fact that I may not be able to save everyone, but that everyone that I save matter. And it allowed me to go through that, and really, when you feel you have the world on your shoulder somehow, because you know, family and friends and all that, is to do your utmost. And I would say, think outside the box. I remember one day when one of the airlines decided to stop flying in one of the locations where we had a lot of people in India. And I said to the CEO of the airline, well, that's going to be really difficult. We still have 30,000 people to airlift for 40,000. And he said, Minister, we just can't, we just can't operationally. And I remember at the time the civil service was saying, well, how do we deal with that? I said, well, it's simple. I'm going to call the CEO of Air India. They said, what do you mean? Well, I said, I don't know. Find me his number. I'm going to call him right now. I need 10 flights a day. And my team were laughing. They said, believe the guy. He's going to do it. Find him the number. One way or the other, he's going to do it. And actually, I put the CEO of Air India on the line and say, sir, I need your help. And I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada, and I expect you to help us, which he did. And you know, sometimes I say, you have to be thinking outside the box. You have to go with your better instinct. When you're doing roles like that, people will try to frame you in a sense of who you should be and what you should do. But never forget your best instinct. And what you learn here, your values, the foundation that you have, is what has guided me all my life. And that served me well. And I remember people say, well, that's very unusual for a minister to do that. And I said, yeah, but that's the right thing to do. And I think you need to be authentic. There's one thing I can tell you, having done 3 elections and a 4th one coming, is authenticity. You cannot fake it. Trust me, when you shake people's hand, when people look you in the eyes, they want authenticity. If you try to frame it, or if you try to fake it, people will see through that. And I can tell you, elected office is the test of humility in your lifetime. I can tell you, I moved from London, England, to a town called Shawinigan. Now, some of you may Google that on your computer. It's rural Canada, so not exactly like London, England. You know, that's where I come from. And when I came back, and my district is bigger than Belgium. Some of you may know, but it's something like 25,000 square miles. So not exactly a small place. And I remember, because no one knew me and my past did not matter to people. For them, I was just the average folks who was running for office. Whatever position I had, diploma I could have, or that was, what are you going to do for me? And I remember one day, my team was asking me to go shake hands for lunch. Imagine, I used to walk in restaurants, but today I still look at that and my daughters cannot believe. They say, how could you ever do that? You know, I walked in restaurants, people were eating, and my team was saying, well, you have to go shake their hands and say, introduce yourself. And I remember one day, it was in the north of my district, and it was a pizza place. People are eating pizza. The last thing they want is someone who they've never seen in their life go around the table. And the manager was nice enough. I said, do you mind if I go around the table? She said, okay, but good luck. And so I did that. I remember going around. I said, hi, my name is Francois-Philippe Champagne. I'm running for federal office. People looking at me and said, but there's no election. I said, yeah, but there'll be one day. And people would, and that was the test of humility. I think public service is a test of humility. And one thing I can tell you, although I had a good career, and you're going to have good careers in the private sector, but never forget that serving others is probably the biggest calling that you can have in your life. When you wake up in the morning and thinking, what can you do for others? I rarely woke up and say, what can I do for me? But what I can do for others. And I can tell you, you can change the world with things. You know, the good thing in private sector, yes, you can achieve great position, great management roles. But in the public service, I'll give you a very practical example. The subway system in Toronto, some of you may have been subway system. Until 6 months ago, riders in the subway system in Toronto, 2 million riders a day. So not a small, it's a lot of people, could not have access to their cell phones because there was no cell phone coverage in 2024. And when the officials brought that to me, I say, that's crazy. I am the regulator in my department, the equivalent of the FTC. I go from space to the FTC to research, and it's everything in between. And by the stroke of a pen, I forced the telecom companies to work together to offer services in the subway system of Toronto. And within 10 days, 2 million people could have their cell phone and be able to either text their family if they have an emergency, call 911, or even do their homework in the subway system. 2 million people. And this was just because I forced companies to put people first. That's the power of public service.
That's great. So you were recently appointed to be the co-leader of something called Team Canada. Can you tell us about Team Canada? What do you hope to achieve? And why is Team Canada important at this moment in time?
Well, and I know there's some Canadian students, so maybe the folks at Western will know the things about the TTC in Toronto. They may be waving now because that was a big thing. It's Team Canada, United States. Listen, the world is in a place. I was in your seat. My first teacher was Henry King, which was professor at the Canada-U.S. Law Institute. I don't know if you know Henry King. I got to know him through Professor Katz. He was teaching a class in international trade, I think. I still remember him to this day. He was the youngest prosecutor in Nuremberg in the Second World War. Not a small thing. That was one of my teachers. That's what Case Western is about. That's what this law school is about. giving me the opportunity as a young boy at the time to be in front of a giant, someone who, marked history, was a young prosecutor in the army just after the Second World War, and trying to bring the international world order. And I'm always fascinated because he said something to me, believe it or not, I'm 53 and I still remember. And I quoted him at NPR this morning. I quoted him on Fox News yesterday. Believe it or not, they invite me to Fox News. He said to me, to us, I was just one of you there in the room. And I always remember he said, if you want to attract investment, you need stability, predictability, and the rule of law. And he said, find me any jurisdiction in the world, or any region, any country, any city, where you don't have that basic frame of stability, predictability, and rule of law, where you can find investment. And Henry King was one of the pillars of the international world order, a rule-based order, where nations abide by rules, and that has, in my view, provided prosperity, stability, and peace for the good part since the Second World War. I'm sure you can do a lot of that. And I was one of those that, believed that when the Berlin Wall failed, we were on the same river in the same boat. The world was, for 30 years, going in a direction, I must say, that, you have teachers who were looking at the European Union, the formation of the European Union. I mean, the world was going in a direction that, China came into the World Trade Organization. The world was in a position where, I think we were believing we were on the same journey. And I think now we're waking up to realize that that's not exactly the case. And it's a world where none of us would ever believe that you would have war in Europe. I think this is something that, if you had asked me at the time, I look at Lou Katz and other, Sidney Picker was my teacher also at the time, others, no one would believe that 20 years ago. The geopolitical tension that you find, whether it's in the Strait of Taiwan, in the Middle East, obviously, and what you find in Ukraine, the fact that we have high energy cost in a number of jurisdictions, high interest rate. Why I'm saying that is that in a time where you have a lot of instability and challenges, you have to double down on the relationship that matter. And I always say the relationship between Canada and the United States is not like a special relationship. I know some of my colleagues in different capitals like to believe that they have a special relationship with the United States. I call the Canada-U.S. relationship the essential relationship because we depend on each other for security. Just think about the Arctic. Just think about our borders. We have been blessed by geography, but I don't think we can take that for granted. And I feel sometimes we're like sister-in-law and brother-in-law. We're family, so we don't nurture that relationship that much. But it is really important to make sure that we understand that the pillar of our security, of our prosperity. I was just here in Ohio today, and believe it or not, Ohio sells more to Canada than its 6 other foreign trading partners. So Canada is by far the largest trading partner of a state like Ohio. Yesterday I was in Michigan. It's 14 times than anyone else. These things which I know, I think we need to connect the dots. I think sometimes people don't realize the importance of that relationship and what we're doing together. I was with Justin, your mayor. It's funny because the Prime Minister of Canada is called Justin. So when I say Justin, I always think about the Prime Minister. But I was talking to Justin, your Justin, and I was saying even as a mayor like Cleveland, it really matters, that relationship, because of the Great Lakes. Think about, we have 20% of the fresh water in the world, about 36 billion of trade, which is going into the main artery, which is going from the Atlantic to the Midwest. We have to work together on prosperity, and all the battery plants that you have attracted, and the investment, and what's coming on in Columbus with Intel. And the third thing was around resiliency. And I think we need to work together to have resilient supply chain. I was just at the Cleveland Clinic, place that most of us would know. I used to walk in front. I was with them. I thought this would just be a great meeting. In a sense, they're kind enough. They said, Minister, you're in town. Cleveland Clinic would like to welcome you. Sure. I go there, we start talking about supply chain. Unbeknown to me, I realized that they depend, their supply chain resiliency is not exactly what they would hope to be. And I'll give you an example. 6 months ago, I was asked to sign a funding request we had received from Medical Isotope. And the Association of Medical Isotope, which is about nuclear medical isotope, they said, we want to give you an award. I'm not sure that I deserve it as much as the people who made it happen. But anyway, I got briefed about that. I learned that 60% of all the medical isotope in the world to cure cancer are coming from Chalk River in Canada. If I didn't sign that, the folks at Cleveland Clinic said, sir, probably people would have died in Cleveland, because where would we source that? And so it's kind of these things when I say connecting the dot, it's the same thing that when I was at you'll love these examples, I was in Washington. And I know in Columbus, you're going to have a great investment. I think Intel is planning to build a massive plant. But when I was in Washington, and you don't need to take it from me, you can take it from President Biden, because when he came in Canada, he said the same thing in front of the House of Commons. But 80% of all the microchip manufactured in the United States are packaged and tested in Canada. So when I said that in Washington, there were a lot of officials and NSA folks, and when I said that, they all turned around and said, is that true? They all look at their staff and said, yeah, it's true. And I said, I assume that the CHIPS Act is about resiliency, to reduce our dependency, but I said, if we don't work together, you're just going to produce more microchip that you need to send in Asia to be packed and tested if we don't increase the capacity in Canada. So that's the type of thing that we need to make sure that we realize that not only we are partners, allies, and friends, and I like to believe, they look at us and we look like the friendly people from the North. And I always, when I was with Prime Minister Trudeau, it's always funny. They always look and say, how can you look so young? And I said, don't worry, we're frozen for 6 months of the year. That's why we can look so young and be in our 50s. But I think we need to move beyond being just nice to be strategic. And I think it's about the prosperity of the United States. It's about the security of the United States, and it's about the resiliency of supply chain in the United States. And I say those are not partisan issue. Economic security is not a partisan issue. Supply chain resiliency is not a partisan issue. National security is not a partisan issue. But I think these things matter very much, and I can tell you, when I meet, I hosted with the Prime Minister of Japan, President of Korea, Chancellor of Germany, CEOs around the world. I can tell there's 3 things which are top of mind to leaders in the world today. 3 things. There's not 20, there's 3. It's about food security, energy security, and supply chain resilience. And I can tell you, when you talk to people around the world and when you can address, and I think there's no better nation that can address that than Canada, United States, because you know what? When people have a choice, they want to trade with people who share their values, the values of democracy, of diversity and inclusion, of respect for people. And I think we need society like Canada and the United States, we need to align our supply chain with our values. And that's the message we're bringing to the United States. But we can take questions from, you can ask me anything from how it is to run, what I eat in the morning to have energy at 5 a.m. when we started at 5 p.m. when we started at 5 a.m., what it is to run for office, what it is to be in public service or having a job, and why did I leave a job that, some people would have said, wow, that was a good retirement fund, and do that. Anything is good because we're amongst family, although if you're going to tweet the folks in Canada about it, well, let me know before, because I may have to answer a question with the press tomorrow.
All right, you hold on to that microphone.
Sure.
I'm going to carry this one so that you guys can speak and the people all over the world can hear. So raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll start the questions. Lou.
I don't have a question.
Well, you can have a comment, too.
Just reminisce a little bit. The minister is correct when he said to me, why did you take me? And I said, because we've never had a Canadian student. But listening to you now, I remember you so well 30 years ago when Henry King used to call you Frenchie. And you had more of an accent then. You sounded like Clayton all the time. But you and I talked about your future at the time. And I'm still a big believer in you becoming the Prime Minister. I want to
You're
tell...
gonna get me in trouble. You're gonna get me in trouble for those watching in Canada. That is someone who loves me very much. You know, don't tweet that immediately. I may get in trouble back home.
I also want to tell you a story. We had a small group, and it was a very close group of students. And there was a woman in the group who was somewhat troubled at the time, from Eastern Europe, if you'll recall, although she now, I believe, lives in Toronto and practices law. But we were concerned about her well-being, and he's the one who stepped forward out of the group to make sure that she was okay. And I truly believe he helped her through a life-endangering crisis. And I've always admired you, and it's just wonderful to have you here.
Thank you very much. I feel really humble. Like I said, I feel like I still belong there more than here anyway. So I feel like I'm still a student. If I had a cap, maybe, you know, no white hair, I could pass, you know, for a student. But thank you. And Louis, and thank you for at the time, I must say, you were a precursor to open the faculty and believe there would be value in bringing international students to mix with American students to share our own experience and share our own story of life. I think you did a great service, I believe, I mean, to me, but I hope people realize you did a great service to Case Western Reserve University because, you know, I did not know Case Western Reserve University. I barely knew Cleveland, but I must say that what you did, Lou, you changed the lives of people. And to all the teachers who are here and all the researchers and everyone here, never forget that one person can change the lives of people. And you did that.
But
so
I benefited the most from it.
You're very kind.
All right. Can someone else raise their hand?
Anything you want. Everything is fair game. We're Canadians. So, and I do question periods every day. So I get an hour of questions, not all of me. But so anything is good because in our system, like I say, which is very different in the American system, we're not appointed, we're elected. And then we're chosen to serve in cabinet, but we have something called question period. If you have one evening and Netflix is down and Crave is not really working and Paramount does not allow you to stream, just watch question period and you'll see what it is to have to answer to people for an hour in the form of parliament. It's not always, I think it's fun to watch, but I call it the dungeon when you're the one to be questioned because you don't know what the questions will be, obviously. And it's not about making you shine, usually. It's about making you, you know, trip on something. But with time, you get a bit of practice. But why don't you go, madam?
Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us today and taking all the time to meet with the students. One of the key points that you brought up was this issue with supply chain, and I was wondering if you could go a little bit more into detail on how someone going into international business could focus on these cross-border relationships that are really happening between Southern Canada and the Northern United States.
It's a very, very good question. Are you from Cleveland or?
I'm from Indianapolis, but I'll be practicing in upstate New York at a law firm focusing.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. This is great. I didn't get an internship, so I ended up going abroad. So, no, I'm joking. The Baileys was very kind to me to bring me on board. But listen, I think that logistics and supply chain is probably, you know, I come from a time before COVID where this was really a back office function, to be honest. No one would really notice or care. You know, it used to be someone in the office in the basement, kind of no window, one phone, half of a computer. But today, I'll give you an example at Cleveland Clinic. I was just talking to the chief procurement officer. Just think about the role that this person has. He was telling, think about today because of supply chain issues and how many, and I'll give you two examples. He was telling me how many of the things that now are back order and that they need to have not only one backup or two backup or three backup because the life of people depend on it. Imagine if you're a surgeon and he was telling me someone is coming to you say, sorry, you can do the surgery because the instrument you're using now is being recalled because of quality fault, and there's no more instrument for that. He was telling me about some containers that every supplier were using the same plastic, which eventually was an issue. They could not have these containers anymore. So I would give you another example, which you've seen these big battery plants that we have. And one of the CEO of the company told me, he said, Minister, when we imported the machinery came from Korea. And the ship has sailed from Korea to bring the equipment to what is Windsor, Detroit, in front of Detroit. And he said, just think about the impact of the world we live in today, the intersection with climate change and geopolitics. The ship sailed from Korea, I think in Busan. They went first to the Panama Canal, but because of the drought, they could not cross the Panama Canal. So the captain said, okay, we're going to try the Suez Canal. So they went around to the Suez Canal, and now the owner of the ship said, hold on, you're not going to go there because of the Houthi, which are attacking ships now. So now what they had to do was to go to go across, around Africa to the Cape of Good Hope. And I don't know if you've ever seen maritime lines, no one goes there because it's a pretty choppy place to cross. But if you have no choice, I guess you do it. This ship has been sailing for 35 days now to try to bring the equipment to build one of the largest battery plants in North America. And I would say the work you're going to do and just think about the legal aspect of all that. Now I put my hat as a former general counsel. Who's going to be responsible for the cost of that? Who has a claim on that? Would the customer say, hey, 35 days ago was supposed to arrive? Who's paying for additional fuel on the boat? Who's responsible for the crew? Who's responsible if they don't make the batteries on time for which they have already sales contract in place? So I think that the whole logistics practice, I don't know if it's a practice, but I would think what you're saying and your vision of that is spot on, because today you have to almost be an internationalist. It's not just about a supply and contract. When I was in this place and we were using contract law, offer and demand, now you have a lot of external factors. I can tell you when I meet CEOs and board chairperson of board, they say geopolitics takes 40% of their time now because you make the wrong decision and you can have a real issue. I'll give you an example. I was with, I think, Volkswagen, not a small company, produce about 2 million cars per year. I think it's Volkswagen, maybe Mercedes-Benz, because I did both, I can't remember. And they were telling me they used to do all the wirings for their cars in Ukraine. Guess what happened? So these things, I would say, could have a disproportionate impact. And I think what you're doing as an internationalist could have, not only you're going to practice law and thinking about the contract, but I think the best advice and where your clients will see value in your advice will be to take into account things that I could tell you 10 years, 20 years ago, no one would have necessarily thought about. But today, when you apply your skills, you'll have to have a much broader perspective, because I just gave you two examples which could lead to how many lawsuits, and saying who's responsible for that now, who's going to pay for it, and how you do the interaction between all these supply chain and these contracts.
Thank you.
And if you need a partner, I may join you as a partner if you ever want a partner in your firm. I remember. It's nice to see you.
Hello, my name is Pearl Morte. I'm a 1L. And my question is, basically, you talked about your experience being a lawyer, especially in the energy sector. So what was that pivotal moment that made you decide to go into politics? Because you said you always wanted to be into politics, but what was that specific moment or event?
My life was too good. No, honestly, and that was the danger, is that I always say, when life is too good, you need to change. Because otherwise, you're never going to do it. It's like starting a family. There's never, I mean, people who have family, I don't have kids. And if there's one thing I could, rewind the tape, I should have taken the risk at that time when I was younger to do that. Now I'm the stepdad to two wonderful girls, and I'm fulfilled in my personal life. But I would say it's one of those things that if you feel the calling, don't expect the perfect moment. Jump in. I can tell you, I was in London, England. I'll give you something. I was in London, England, and I ran in a riding. In Canada, we call that riding, like a district. And this was a district of a former prime minister, Prime Minister Chrétien. So 50 years in politics, an icon, a Reagan, a Bush, a Clinton, an Obama. I mean, it was an icon in Canadian politics. And I live in London, England. Imagine, now I look back, it's been like being an entrepreneur. I know the dean of the business school is there. I look at myself today, I said, would I ever do that again, knowing what I had to go through? No. Yes, I would, but not if I was to be rational and look at the risk and say, because, listen, I came from London, England. I left my job first. So this was pretty risky. It's like I signed it, and I remember saying, do you realize every letter you put, and my name is long, Francois-Philippe Champagne. So every letter, he said, think about the stock options that are leaving your account, every letter. And it's a pretty long name. So that signature cost me quite a bit because I was in a corporate role with a pretty good job. I could have been CEO, I guess, if I'd stayed long enough. And then I come to a place called Shawinigan. You Google that. Not exactly like a metropolis. It's a fairly small town, rural Quebec, rural Canada. And I have to make myself, known in that community. But one thing that nobody told me is that first I had to win the nomination. And I thought this would be like an easy, like a walk in the park. You'll laugh a bit at that. So I call like the district person who was responsible for what we call the political association, the Liberal Association. So I go there and I said, he's a fairly senior gentleman. So I called him, I said, sir, I'd like to meet you. He said, yes, come tomorrow, 7 a.m. And he said, you pay for the coffee, and he hang up. I said, oh my God, wow. This is not my London cozy business, sir, yes, maybe, please. That was like, okay, that's reality of life. Showed up, and he has just less than the dean. He just had one piece of paper. So I'm like, oh, wow. So I sat with him. I said, where is the other members of the executive? Oh, he said, I'm the youngest one. They all passed away. So he said, good luck, because he said, there's nothing if you want to start a career in politics if you recruit your own people. I said, okay. So I said, what about members? I said, we must have registered voters. I mean, listen, this is a place where a prime minister got elected, number of election. He said, oh, yeah, Susan had the list, but she lost it 10 years ago. So I said, okay, wow. But he said, don't worry, it's great. Everyone you meet can become now a registered voters. You do it your way. And I said, money. I mean, this is like a district of a prime minister. I mean, this must be, everyone was telling me it's going to be easy. He said, oh, wow. Well, we have about $300 in the account, and we've not paid the accountant for 3 days. And he said, thank you. He said, you owe me a coffee, and he left. That's how I started in politics. So if you ask me, did I have the best possible chance? I'm not sure. But I persevere, because for me it was a one-way street. And what I did, I took myself and went to shake hands. But the story behind that is that don't expect the perfect moment. Don't feel as an imposter. So many times in my life, and the book is called True North by Bill George. I recall that. And everyone I laid off in my life, thanks God, not too many, I always give them a copy of that book. Because I said, maybe in this position is not your true north, but you'll find it somehow. When you find your calling in life, follow it. The syndrome of the imposter is probably the biggest impediment of us to achieve great things. To think that we might not be the right person, that there could be someone smarter than me, someone who has more experience, someone who's older. One of the things I faced when I was young in the practice is I looked young. How would people take me seriously? I remember my first job in Italy. You'll laugh at that. Italy in 1994, I was the only foreigner in the company. There was like 3,000 people. And I remember my office was on the 7th floor. This was like the top executive floor. And whatever reason, I had an office there. Remember walking in the elevator one day, and there's a nice lady. She looks at me and said, "Oh, you're going to the 7th floor." I said, "Yeah." My Italian was average. She said, "Oh, your dad works here." I said, "My dad? No, my dad is in Canada." So she said, "Are you coming to see your mom?" I said, no, my mom is really in Canada." She said, "But what are you doing then?" I said, "I work here." And she looked at me and said, "Unbelievable," and she left. And you will face that. I face that because I look young. You will have other things that will, but believe. I think at the end of the day, the key message is believe in yourself. You get out of this school with the best possible skill to succeed in life. You have a team of people around you that will support you for the rest of your life. And never underestimate the power of a network. When I was young, network was seen as a kind of shabby thing, people smoking cigar and all that and saying, "Oh my God, this networking." Honestly, today I can tell you, people like Professor Katz said that I met here, I still meet them today. I happen to be in different groups around the world that I've continued to engage. And even with what I do today, I still engage with them. And it's amazing when you open up to a network of people, not only locally, but even nationally or internationally, it opens a lot of opportunities and possibilities. So that would be believe in yourself. And even today, sometime I wake up and say, "Did I really get elected?" And I walk out and say, "Yes, I guess so." And so you have to believe in yourself and what you can achieve.
Thank you.
One last question someone has.
Why don't you go?
Thanks again for being here. So you've been meeting with a lot of people while you've been in Cleveland, and I'm sure your job is a lot of meetings and people asking you the same kind of questions or asking you to do things for them and sign things for them. Is there one question that you really wish people would ask you sometimes, or anything that you want people to ask you for?
It's a very good question. I love your question. You know what? In doing what you do, like what I do, people forget the person. They see the public figure. They see the elected official. They see the government representative. One thing that people forget, I'll tell you something. I do grocery. I at home, I'm the one, well, my wife watching, she would say not all the time, but I do part of the grocery, just for the record, if she's watching. And it's amazing to me that I would do the most simple thing in life, like doing grocery. People said, "Oh my God, you do grocery." I said, "Yes, I do eat." And it's funny that one of the things that you will find, and that's why I stay very much connected with the people, because when I've done what I do for 10 years, people could recognize you in different settings. But one of the things that people forget, and I always try to bring that to people, is you're not just an elected official. You're a partner. You're a dad. You're a neighbor. You're a friend. And I wish people would see in a very polarized time in politics the human behind the face. I think people forget that, and I wish, because we need to attract more young people in politics. And it's true in every country. I think that we need to change the way we're doing. I look at even our own system. We sit from Monday to Friday in the evening. I keep saying I'm of a generation where people have accepted that as a trade-off in their life. Is that the right thing? I don't think so. If you talk to my daughters, they would never want to be doing what I'm doing. And I think there must be a better way of doing. And I wish for you, all the young people watching, and people like you may one day want to serve, I hope you're going to shape that in line with what you believe and your values. There's other ways to do that we can maintain our institutions. And sometimes I so wish that we, my generation, could reform them. And you'll find that sometimes, it gets stuck in politics and there's reasons. But I see all the young people who would want to be in elected office, and I really encourage you, but shape it the way you want. You don't need to follow the pattern that we have set for ourselves. We are stuck in our system with traditions which go back 150 years. They may not be fit for purpose today. I'll give you an example. we decided that we could have electronic voting in Canada. You know, when we did that, colleagues in the House thought that that was the end of democracy, that the sun would stop shining, that humanity was gone, that what we were proposing was the end of all democracy. And we all have a phone, and we all do banking with our phones. So we said, what's the difference if we vote with our phone? No, now I can, you know, if I'm in Canada, because Canada's like the U.S., a big country, with face recognition, I can vote in the House at the same time that I engage with people, which at the end of the day, I think that's what people want. You know, obviously they understand I have to be in the capital to do the work that I have to do, but they also want us to engage with them. And when we did that, for me was liberating in a way, because we changed something, perhaps made my life easier, but also for future generation, that we can do things differently, that you could be an elected official and have a family, that you could be an elected official and be able to be with you know, your loved ones, or be able even to raise a family. And I think we need to evolve our institution to attract the best and brightest. And I would say, if there was one message, I would say, let's seize the moment. I think there's never been a better time in life. You know, you're at the edge of one of the biggest transformation in humanity. I mean, I'm of a generation where I think the internet was a big change. You know, believe it or not, I went to the library to do research when I was at Case Western. I think there were computers, but not that. We were starting, I guess. And I would say, let's seize the moment, because whether it's the revolution you see, for example, in electrification, or what you're seeing with AI. I happen to be with someone that you may know. I said that to the dean of the business school. I was with Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, just 2 weeks ago. And I asked him a question. I said, listen, how would you compare AI to the internet? And NVIDIA is that company which has fairly succeeded, I would say, in terms of computing power and market cap. Started with 3 people. And he said, he stopped and he said, Minister, AI will be 1,000 times more powerful than the internet. And I came back home that night and I said to myself and to my family, I said, assuming it's 50% wrong, that's still a lot. And I said, assuming it's 90% wrong, that's still very much. And even if it's 95% wrong, I've never seen anything in my life more than the internet as a revolution. And he thinks it's 5 times bigger. Actually, he thinks it's 1,000 times, but I discounted a bit his statement. But I said that would be a big change. So I think you're living at the time where there's enormous possibilities in front of you. And I would say, the second thing I would say, let's be ambitious. I think you have everything to be ambitious today, because you can connect to the world. When I was studying, this type of events would not be possible. Today, if you have the best idea and you're willing to bring it to the end, everything is possible. Look at Greta Thunberg. Who would have said that one student could get the attention of the world? You may agree or disagree with what she believes, but I would say she has been a catalyst for change in many places. And who would have said that one person, never underestimate the power of one person to change the world. One person is getting the attention of the world and calling for more action on climate change. And the last thing I would say, make the best out of it. I can tell you some of the best year of my life was right here where you're standing. And I cherish, you know, if there was one thing I could do, I don't know if technology would allow me, but I would come and spend a week where you're sitting next to you, and I think that would be one of the best weeks of my life. So with that, thank you very much for having me.
Minister, you're always so candid and inspiring and insightful, and I'm really impressed with your interactions with our students and your former professors. We are so lucky to have you as one of our alums, and Canada is so lucky to have you as its minister. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, everyone. Merci tout le monde. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
There is a lot of food and drinks in the back of the room, so please help yourself before you leave. And thanks for coming, everybody.